Hi, and welcome to this edition of the Insurance Experts. It's my pleasure to have Sandy Essex on the line. She's one of the top long-term care planning advisors in the entire country. Thanks for joining us today, Sandy.
Thanks for having me, Mark. I'm excited to talk with your audience.
Yeah, so not everyone finds their career in long-term care planning. How did you find yourself in the industry?
Well, you're right. Just like most people don't wake up and say, I'm going to go into the insurance industry. I actually was in education for 15 years. And after being in that education role, I had been meeting different people along the way. And you know how things happen in life and they always kind of stick in your head, but you don't know really why you had to learn about something. I
Mhm.
had a really good friend who got ALS. He was married, he had two small children. His wife was working. She tried to keep him at home as long as she could. But because of the stress financially, emotionally, and physically that it took a toll on her, she actually left him. And because of all that, he ended up having to go into a nursing home. He lost independence. He lost control of where he could go. And because he couldn't communicate anymore and he could only use his eyes blinking to communicate, he
Mhm.
didn't live very long in a nursing home. I
Mhm.
felt very bad that that was what happened with the system. Is that where he was landed? Then I had a friend who was in his 50s, fell off a ladder, became paralyzed, no family to care for him, and he had to go to a nursing home and live in an area that wasn't really desirable for him. And
Mhm.
lastly, my step grandfather ended up going to a nursing home because he couldn't stay at home anymore and financially he couldn't keep at home. So,
Mhm.
from all those things, I met a long term care planning advisor who does what I do today. And when he told me about long term care insurance, I said, well, why don't more people know about it? And he said, because the government really doesn't force people to learn about it, and they don't force you to have this type of insurance. So, like homeowners or car that we have to have, they don't have anything for long term care. And that's when I decided to change my focus to helping people learn about the importance of long term care planning.
So how long have you been in the business for?
Almost 15 years,
Wow, wow. So if you had to guess, how many clients over that time have you helped with planning?
at least over 3,000 clients across the country. What I find is that people have relatives and friends all over the place. And because of that, I do majority of all my conferences via the web, so I can work with people all around the country.
Right. Now, obviously, it's very important to plan early. We say your health buys you the coverage, but it's never too late as well. And I know today I wanted you to share with us your thoughts around the underwriting process and help people out there understand it a little bit better. So tell us a little bit about what does the process typically look like? What's the first step when you're working with the client on underwriting?
Well, the first thing I always tell them is underwriting is not something that happens overnight. You don't just call in like you would with car insurance and tell them your make and model, your tickets, things like that, and get insurance. This could be a 3 to 12 week process. And the point is that I'm going to become your health advocate. I'm going to become your health defense attorney to
Hmm.
show to the different insurance companies that you are a good risk for them. So I gather all this information from them and they have to trust me that I'm going to work on their behalf to paint a really good picture to these insurance companies that they're a good risk. Once I've gathered the information, I go out to the different carriers. I ask the underwriters, can we at least apply? Because I don't want to waste the time of my clients applying with a company that they could never get coverage with.
Hmm.
And once I then know the companies we can discuss, that's when my education process will start with them and help them. And together, we're going to create a plan design that they feel the most comfortable. So it's giving them a safety net and not giving them something that overinsures them, but they're comfortable with.
Right. And as an actuary, at my background, pricing the products, there's a lot of factors that go into that formula in terms of how much the insurance companies charge. One of those major factors is what does our underwriting risk pool look like? And so different carriers out there are trying to attract different types of clients based on the conditions that they have. And so having someone
Correct.
like yourself navigate the market, identify those carriers at kind of what we call a sweet spot for particular conditions is highly valuable. And that's why it's so important to work with an insurance expert. So tell us a little bit about a client that you worked with, and maybe that will help give us some life to what this process looks like. Anybody come to mind?
Well, I actually have so many clients that it's hard, although I do have one client that I worked with just a few years ago,
Hmm.
and she actually had Lyme's disease. And that's a pretty big conversation of topic today with the Lyme disease, because you really don't know if you have Lyme disease. There's not a true test that says, yes, you have Lyme disease. They will put you in that category, but it's not necessarily that condition. And I had a client who was doing Lyme disease holistically. So she wasn't using Western medicine. She actually had gone to a woman or a doctor who said that she could have chronic fatigue syndrome and Lyme disease. So with that combination, that really put her into a life that the insurance companies were not comfortable with. So what happened is they said they would take her application. She did end up getting declined. But because a generalist who might do long-term care planning, thinking they know how to do this, they may not even know what to do next. And I continue to fight through with the client. So we just did an appeal with the insurance company. And we were able to bring in an appeal letter from one of her doctors that she had gone to afterwards that said, no, she doesn't have chronic fatigue syndrome. She then actually did have to go to another doctor with a rheumatologist to get another test done. So together, over a course of 1 year, we were able to get her overturned. We were able to get the same coverage that we applied for and the exact policy design that she wanted.
Wow.
Because I stayed consistent and persistent, because in my heart, I knew that she could get coverage. And I didn't give up, and neither did she.
Right. And I will say, at least 90% of the appeals actually don't get overturned, because what you really have to bring to the table is new facts, right? You can't be an interpretation or a discretionary thing, but if you can bring new facts to the table that were not available to the underwriter when they originally looked at it, then you have a shot. And that's kind of what the experts like yourself, they know how to navigate that process.
Absolutely. And with the relationships that we have with the underwriters, because we've been in this industry a long time, they know that we're going to bring people that we think really are a good risk for them. And the idea is to make sure that you start with the right company first, because if you get declined once, the other carriers don't really like that. So when you work with a generalist, they don't necessarily know all that, and they might put you just to see if you could get coverage. And some of my clients have said when they work with someone like that, they don't even know why they really got declined, because they didn't really get back to them about what it was, and they didn't really want to do all the work that I put into it to get them appealed.
Right. Well, I appreciate you joining us on today's episode. I really hope to have you on future episodes. We have so many topics to cover in this space, but thanks so much again.
Thanks, Mark. Have a great day.